So yeah, a lot of models of consciousness are really paradigm shifting, to say the least. Easily to reject out of hand because for the longest, materialism, physicalism has been the dominant premise to doing science. Materialistic methodologies work. And so a lot of times we conflated what works with what's ontologically the truth. And if you're only looking at behaviors and predictions, then yeah, it's easy to be drawn and attracted to a physical sort of world. I mean, after all, it's very intuitive, and we're able, like I said, to really advance, as a human species because of that project, that endeavor. Nothing wrong with that at all. But perhaps if we're going to start exploring consciousness and things of that nature, we have to really think outside the box. And it seems like lately that's been the trend. That physicality is sort of a category of awareness, right? So, from a non dual perspective, the world of physical objects is not a realm fundamentally separate from consciousness, but it's a category within awareness itself. So, physicality on this view is the shared experience that arises in an inner subjective field, a common experiential space in which multiple conscious beings co perceive a world structured by stable patterns, right? So, rather than treating matter as the ontological foundation and consciousness as a late arriving byproduct, the non dual lens suggests that awareness is the primitive given. What we call the physical is simply the coherent, rule governed mode of that appearance that consciousness takes when its patterns are shared, synchronized, and mutually validated by mutual observers. Now, contemporary scientific and philosophical research increasingly orients towards that possibility, like I said. Michael Levin's work in morphogenesis shows that even simple biological systems, cells, tissues, and regenerative structures exhibit goal directed, problem solving intelligence that is not reducible to local biochemical interactions. The electric face, the bioelectric gradients that guide development, and the capacity of tissues to repartition themselves into novel brains, but distribute as informational agency throughout living systems. Levin's framework hints that cognition is not a property of neurons alone, but an intrinsic feature of organized systems, an idea resonant with non-dual philosophies that treat intelligence as fundamental rather than emergent, right? Joscha Bach also contributes to this shift with his work on artificial minds and representational architectures. Bach argues that consciousness is best understood as a control model, an agent's recursive representation of itself within the environment. So his emphasis on learning to be a self suggests that subjectivity is woven into the very process of modeling reality. And this aligns with non-dual perspectives as well by reframing the self not as a material structure, but as a pattern of awareness looping back on itself. Bach's ideas help dismantle like that strict partition between internal experience and external physicality by showing that what we call physical reality is inseparable from an agent's representational perspective. Then we have Jonathan Schuller, nested observer window model. And this pushes this idea further by explicitly challenging the sufficiency of current physicalism as we understand it. Schuller proposes that consciousness requires an extension of physics. Instead of treating awareness as an emergent illusion, we should consider it kind of like a fundamental dimension of the universe, right? So his model imagines consciousness as a nested window of observation at increasing levels of complexity, each integrating and coordinating lower level observer processes. Now, this architecture mirrors the layered nature of awareness found in contemplative traditions. It mirrors Levin's findings, actually, that intelligence scales across biological levels. Schuller's work reinforces a growing scientific movement towards recognizing that experiencing cannot be fully captured by third person descriptions by themselves. The convergence becomes even more striking when contrasted with Donald Hoffman's model of dynamic conscious agents. So Hoffman argues that physical objects are not the true constituents of reality, but interface icons, stable patterns within an evolutionary game of perception. Reality is, at bottom, a network of interacting conscious agents whose interactions give rise to the world that we experience. In this viewpoint, again, dovetails with Schuller's nested window of awareness. So both accounts reframe the universe not as a machine made of matter, but as a relational field of experiencing entities whose shared interactions generate this appearance of a physical world. So these scientific models really just reflect like a broader philosophical shift. According to Field Papers 2023 survey, I read that panpsychism, which is long considered like a fringe view, has shown a significant growth among philosophers of mind, alongside renewed interest in idealism or neutral monism. While there's still no consensus on any of these models of consciousness, the trend is unmistakable though. Researchers and thinkers are increasingly exploring frameworks that reject this reductive materialism and treat consciousness as either fundamental or co-fundamental with the physical. So this does not mean the debate is settled by any stretch of the imagination, right? But it does signal a paradigm shift, which awareness is sort of regaining, primacy in this space, right? So the first idea, I guess, is that the information is the patterning of reality, not a property of material objects. Scientific models show us that physical systems can differ drastically in material composition while exhibiting identical informational structure. For example, a computational process can be implemented in silicon, neurons, or even fluid dynamics. Yet the pattern, the information remains the same. The non-dual implication here is that matter is not the container of that information. Rather, matter is a modality through which informational coherence manifests, right? Now, this mirrors the idea in physics that the laws governing matter are defined in terms of symmetries, relations, constraints, in other words, informational regularities that are not tied to any specific substance. Second, a non-dual scientific framing holds that mind, matter, and energy are different perspectives on one underlying informational process. Cognitive science increasingly views consciousness not as some sort of emergent layer, but as the intrinsic first person aspect of integrated information within a system. Like it's explored in theories like IIT, Giulio Tononi, or Friston's free energy principle. So, from an internal view, integrated information appears as like a subjective experience. But from an external view, the same informational organization appears as measurable physical processes of neural activity, metabolic cycles, morphinogenic fields, and so on and so on. So, this dual aspect structure suggests that mental and physical are not different substances, but different vantage points on the same underlying informational dynamic. Non duality follows naturally. There are not two worlds of mind and matter, but one informational continuum appearing to us in two different modes. And third, information in this view is not abstract, it is the dynamic flow and self organization by which the universe maintains coherence. Thermodynamics would show us that information is tied to entropy, structure, and the direction of physical processes. Biology demonstrates that information guides cellular behavior, morphogenesis, and adaptive intelligence at every level, from microbial chemtaxis to multicellular patterning. Michael Levin's work, for example, reveals that these cells participate in global informational networks that shape bodies in ways that cannot be explained by molecular mechanics by themselves, right? This would suggest that information behaves as a causal organizing principle independent of material particulars. In a non dual interpretation, this is simply the universe participating in the unfolding of its own pattern, its own being. A scientific non dual framework, therefore, does not claim that the world is just consciousness in that simplistic sense, nor that matter is illusory. Instead, it's arguing that the physical and the experiential are complementary expressions of a deeper informational ontology, a unified field in which patterns, structures, and relations are primary. Matter and energy arise as stable, measurable forms of this informational activity. Consciousness arises as the intrinsic, self aware expression of that same process. What changes is not the science, but the metaphysical interpretation of what science is actually describing. So, in this sense, the question of whether information reduces to matter or matter reduces itself to information may be a bit misleading, right? A non dual scientific view would suggest that matter is not fundamental. You know, information is not a third thing added to matter, it is the fundamental structure, reality from which the appearance of matter, energy, life, and mind all arise. The universe is neither mental nor material. In essence, it is informational in a way that encompasses and transcends both of these concepts. So, taken together, the developments in philosophy, biology, cognitive science, and theoretical physics suggest that we may be moving towards a non dual synthesis. And under this view, physicality is not opposed to consciousness, but arises within it as one of its stable, shareable categories. Levin's distributed intelligence, Bach's recursive self models, Schuller's nested observer frames, Hoffman's conscious agents, IIT, all of these sort of things converge on a single implication. The boundary between mind and world is becoming increasingly porous. The emerging scientific landscape sort of hints that experience and physicality are not two separate domains, but two expressions of the same underlying awareness, an insight long held by non-dual traditions, and now it's resurfacing at the frontier of modern thought. And so it's early in the game, like I said. Maybe most more than half of all theories of mind are non-materialistic now. Not all of it, there's no consensus, but it's moving in that direction. And this is good news, that we're actually making some kind of progress towards some kind of agreed upon observation about the mind. And this has a lot of implications for the kind of world we could possibly live in the future, where we start seeing ourselves in each other. There's more symbiosis. There's more sympathy, empathy for each other. And this is a good thing, right? This is what we've learned in the game theory, that cooperation over time is what helps us to succeed. you know all good stuff. Anyways, that's my thought for today. I just wanted to share that information, and I thank you so much